This is a giraffe that has mastered tech eye. My mom likes giraffes, so we tend to get her little giraffe things. Also, applicable because I kind of get to talk about a giraffe in this video. I don't know what I mean by kind of. I do get to talk about a giraffe in this video. I also get to talk about a bull, a leopard, a sheep, a wolf, an owl, and what the heck is Kumadori supposed to be? An octopus? I don't remember. And I get to touch on a thing with no spine. I get to talk about CP9, or at least their independent report in regards to cover page series number 10, CP9's independent report. This is a cover page story that focuses on the CP9 agents after what happens between the end of the Enies Lobby arc and essentially when they kind of show back up again during Dressrosa. And I will be going over kind of what happens to them during the time skip, just to kind of explain kind of where that jumps into play. So we've got that. CP9 is, of course, all the agents that Luffy and the others ended up battling during the course of Enies Lobby. Don't care about Nero the Sea Weasel, and unfortunately I do have to talk about Spondum a little bit during this, but not very much, thankfully. So, this cover page series ran from chapter 491 to 528, and it had 33 installments, plus 3 where they are now for Water 7, which I will be going over at the beginning of the video. Short summary of this video, CP9, the CP9 agents end up surviving the annihilation of Enies Lobby thanks to Blue and O's door ability. And then it's them having to get money to pay for Rob Lucci's wounds, and then a little bit more after that, and then them kind of just heading off on their own at the end of it and saying F you to Spondum. Not that I blame them. The man is horrible, and all of them hate him anyway, so yeah. Okay, so first we're going to go through the shorts that we have that are the where they are now in regards to Water 7, as opposed to like I had in Skypiea. My notes were slightly wrong. I had to fix them. Oh no. These ones just kind of catch us up on what's going on in Water 7 at this point in time. This part of the story obviously takes place after the post-Enies Lobby arc in regards to where it picks up for these characters. And the first one is in regards to, we get to see, so the first one is Yokozuna does not challenge the sea train anymore. So we get to see Kokoro, Chimney, the little bunny, and Yokozuna, who is of course the giant frog. And they are at the little train station where we are introduced to Kokoro and Chimney in the first, when we first get to Water 7. And Yokozuna is not attacking the sea train anymore. He kind of got that out of his system with getting to help go save Frankie with everything that happened during Water 7. So he's not attacking the sea train anymore, which is good. He can just kind of relax now, which is also very good. And of course we have Kokoro and Chimney and the bunny being very happy, which is nice. Number 2. Iceberg's new secretary auditions, which is just one of my favorite panels in all of this series, which is just funny. Because it is Iceberg sitting in his office, and they're doing like these secretary auditions, and there's just this line of potential secretaries going up behind them. And the first one is this very sexy lady in a bikini top and very short shorts and very high, like, fishnet stockings and heels. And she's just like, come on, Iceberg, pick me. She's trying to seduce him in the process, which is hilarious because, of course, given what happened with Khalifa being a spy for CP9, now Iceberg has to find a new secretary because Khalifa as much as she was an agent, she was like the best secretary he had ever found up to that point in time. And she was an amazingly hard worker, even though she was spying on him in the whole time. Same thing with like Haku and Lucci. They were amazingly hard workers, even though they were spying the whole time. And in the background, we see Lulu is like putting his head up to the glass. Like, come on, no, come on, get away from him. And like we see all these other various secretaries. And the lady in the bikini top and the very short shorts and high stockings is edition number 151. So he's already had to go through 150 of these. And then there's another one behind her. And then there is the little girl secretary, who of course we end up finding out much, much later. Her name is Alice, and she is actually canonically 8 years old at this point in time, is 10 years old after the time skip. That's the way that works. And she is the one who ends up getting picked to be his secretary. And she is just this amazing little secretary and does her job amazingly. To be fair, I think Califo would be proud of her, and she actually kind of got her anime debut during Vegapunk's big speech that he did, where she's like showing up and like getting everything set up for like the speech to be broadcasted across Water 7 for people to watch. So we get introduced to her, and this cover page is one of the ones that actually does get referenced in the anime. In episode 381, Krogus is reading the newspaper, and on the cover, or on the back page of it, we can see that there's like Iceberg is holding auditions for a new secretary. So that's just kind of funny. And the photo is essentially just like what is depicted in this cover page right here. So that's just kind of funny there. I love the fact that even in the background, there's a Yagura bowl that is trying to audition to be a secretary. And I'm kind of like, you know what? I kind of want to see the Yagura bowl be the one that gets picked. Just because, why the heck not? So that's just kind of funny there. Then we move into number 3, Galley Law Company's vice president, Polly, his fans, and his debt collectors. So, of course, we get caught up with Polly, who is still, of course, having to run through the streets because he gambles so much, so he's got all of the, he's been promoted to vice president of the Galley Law Company. Good on him. Proved himself. No argument there. And he is being chased by his debt collectors because he gambles so much, and then he is also being chased by his fans who adore him. So that's just extra funny there. Because, like, as we see throughout the course of Water 7, the shipwrights who work at the Galley Law Company kind of have, like, their own little fan groups, which is just kind of adorable. I kind of wish we got introduced to a few more of the shipwrights throughout the course of Water 7, but we get, like, a good chunk of them in regards to Polly and Lulu and Tilestone, and then, of course, Kaku and Lucci in that regard as well, before we find out that they're traitors. That they're spies, so we get that. So we have like Polly is just having to run for his life from his fans, which is just funny. And then we get number 4, Oimo and Kashi head for Elbath. So as of course what happens during the course of Enies Lobby is, of course, Usopp befriends Oimo and Kashi and explains to them that Dory and Bragi are actually on Water Set, or are on a Little Garden still at that point in time. By the way, I love how they handled the Little Garden arc in the live action. I thought they did amazing with it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I love Dory and Bragi in the live action. I know this is going to be coming out like a month after that comes out, but I don't care. They did a great job with that. I really liked how they handled season 2. There's a few bits here and there that I'm like, well, I guess that could have been done differently, but I don't blame them for changing it. Love that. No argument here. But we have Oimo and Kashi, they're waving goodbye to the friends that they made in Water 7. That would be like the shipwrights, Iceberg, stuff like that. Probably Kokoro and Chimney say goodbye to them as well. And they are heading out, and they're probably just in like, I guess like the Elbath version of like a little dinghy for them, or the giant version of a little dinghy. So that way they can work on getting back to Elbath. Now, there is always the whole question of, do they have an eternal pose to Elbath? And the answer is, I don't think so. So we'll just have to well, we know that they end up succeeding in getting back to Elbath, because they get back to Elbath and then they go all the way to Little Garden, where they get Dory and Broggy back, and then they take them back to Elbath in order for them to get new sword and a new sword and a new axe, because they got destroyed at the end of Little Garden. And we know that they then show back up, and of course all of that stuff is coming to fruition right now in Elbath, depending on what's going on in Elbath by the time this video goes up. So we have that. So, Oimo and Kashi are going to succeed in what they are going to do. It's just going to take about another 2 years before we get the payoff for it. So, into the actual reason for why we are here for the CP9's independent report. So, into this, number 1, Island of No Survivors. So we get to see a bombed out, ruined version of Enies Lobby. That, of course, was destroyed during the Buster Call because the Navy destroyed their own frickin' island. Because they're the Navy. Because they're the Marines in this regard. And they have destroyed the island, and there's just, nothing left but rubble. Number 2, air door. So we see that Blueno, and an air door appears among the ruins, and Blueno pops out, and he has the rest of the CP9 survivors from the Buster Call, because he was able to get them into his air door space, his door little pocket dimension that he has. Where they can hide in there, and they're going to be okay. And we see Fukuro, and we see Khalifa there, and he's got, Rob Lucci on his shoulder. Because, of course, Blueno was the first one to get knocked out, because he got defeated by Luffy before the whole proper start actually began. And he's kind of the one that Luffy tests out, gear 2nd and 3rd on a little bit. And so Blueno got knocked out first, and then he regained consciousness at some point, probably during all of the explosions going on, realized what was going on, and ended up going through and opening air doors at each of the different places where the other agents were, where his friends were, and pulled each of them into where he was, because of course, Blueno was defeated by Luffy, Lucci was defeated by Luffy, Kaku got defeated by Zoro, Khalifa got defeated by Nami, Jabra got defeated by Sanji, Fukuro got defeated by Frankie, and then Kumadori got defeated by Chopper in his Monster Point form. So each one of them got defeated. Technically, I guess, Funkfried was defeated, but he more just gets, scared down by, I think, Frankie. Or whomever, I don't remember. And then, of course, Spondam gets beat to all heck, and probably most of the bones in his body broken by Robin. Good. So, they each got defeated. Spondam is the only one that they don't say, because they all hate Spondam. But, Blueno saves the other ones, and he pulled them into his door dimension to keep them safe while the bombardment was happening around them in Enies Lobby. Now he's opened up the door and pulled them out, and is pulling all of them out so that way they can see what's going on. Number 3, save Rob Lucci. So the different agents are sitting down in the rubble, and, they're getting, Khalifa kind of, apparently her clothes got destroyed by Nami, so she's got a blanket wrapped around her, and pretty much all of them are conscious except for Lucci, who is, if he is conscious, he's definitely going in and out of consciousness, and he's in a lot of pain from the beating he took from Luffy. And they're like, okay, we need to get Lucci medical attention as fast as possible. And then, of course, Hattori is weeping for his master as he's flying above. So Hattori survived. He's fine. The pigeon survived. Now we have 4, forced error, pursuers from the world government. So we see Blueno and Jabra kind of hiding behind a bunch of rubble, and there's a bunch of different agents there that have been sent by Spondam, and of course Spondam blames them for causing the Buster call, he blames the Straw Hats and he blames them. So Spondum is doing everything he can to not be the one blamed for the Buster call, so he's blaming it on whoever he can. And like, so they're, Jabra and Balloon are like listening in on what's going on. And they're like, okay, well, we can't stay here. This is not a safe place for us. So number 5, the train rail of escaping. So we, of course, throughout the course of Water 7, we get introduced to the sea train. And of course, the sea train is this, method that they can use to travel from one island to the next instead of having to use a ship, and it's much safer. And of course, we see that the CP9 agents here are traveling on the tracks, following them to wherever they're supposed to go. Now, there are a couple of different places that it can go to, and I'll go over those in a moment. But we, of course, have Kaku is, of course, still very badly injured as well, and he's being carried by Jabra, and then Kumadori is carrying Lucci. One of the things that I kind of think would have been interesting is, or at least something that would have been interesting, is if they had had some type of medical training themselves, just in case, anybody gets hurt on the job. But of course, the world government and the other CP agencies don't really care about that. So yeah. Then we get to 6, Spring Queen Town, St. Poplar, without the medical fees. So the crew the agents have walked from Ennis Lobby to St. Poplar, which is one of the other islands that is connected by the sea train. So there are several different islands connected by the sea train. There is Water 7, Pucci, which is, I believe, the party island, St. Poplar, and San Faldo, and then Ennis Lobby. So those are the 4 main islands in this area that are connected via the sea trains that sea train tracks and sea trains that Tom developed with Frankie and Iceberg, and then that's Galilov essentially continued to keep intact and will improve upon later. So now they have gotten to St. Poplar, and they're like, okay, so we reached a place, they have doctors, but we're gonna need to get money to pay for Lucci's medical fees because this is the One Piece world, and their, medical system is probably not a whole lot better in regards to insurance than, the US is. So they're like, okay, now we gotta make money. So, 7, save Rob Lucci. Kubidori performs to earn medical fees, to earn money for this. So each of the different members of CP0 are now going to use some of their talents in order to make money or earn money so that way they can use it to pay for Lucci's medical bills. So first we have Kumadori, and of course Kumadori is kind of just like this natural born performer anyway, and he's doing like this one-man kabuki show, which is just interesting. Head debate. Kumadori is doing like essentially this one-man kabuki show, which he's very good at. We saw his flair for the dramatics throughout the course of Ennis Lobby, so that's entertaining. So he's doing that. And then we have 8, earning medical fees, Jabra and Blue Nose Wild Animal Show. So this one's funny. So now we have doing their part to get money for Lucci's operation. Blue Nose hosting this mini circus where Jabra in his wolf hybrid form is leaping through a burning hoop, which of course we see like just these kids in the background that find this very entertaining, and people are of course throwing money into the hat or whatever in order for them, to get money. And so Jabra is just like, haha, I'm a wolf, jumps through the flaming door or the flaming circle, which is probably something they had to do for training at some point in time as Cypherpole agents. Number 9, earning medical fees, the giraffe slide. Giraffe. And this is now Fukuro and Kaku. Kaku is in his full beast form. So he's just a giraffe, and he's using himself as a slide for the St. Poplar children. All of this is happening while it's raining, so it's just like this overtone of like rain and, stuff like that going on. So he's acting as a slide for the kids to slide down, and they're climbing up Fukuro to get up to slide down the giraffe. slide down the giraffe in a suit. So we're doing that. Then we get number 10, earning medical fees, cleaning the streets, or the roofs in this case. So we see that Khalifa is now using her devil fruit powers, which of course Kaku and Khalifa have like barely had their devil fruit powers for like maybe 2 days at this point in time, depending on how long it took for them to walk from Ennis Lobby to St. Poplar and not be spotted by the Marines, which good on them. Considering two of their two strongest members were very badly injured. So Khalifa is, of course, using her devil fruit powers in order to, her soap fruit in order to, clean, like this whole section of town in one go, by using her powers and the rain to, like, wash the roofs and, like, the sides of these buildings and stuff like that in a very quick amount of time because her bubbles are, whoa, camera got moved. I didn't notice that. How long was that there? Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me that the camera was messed up, Chip? Don't know when that happened. So what ends up happening is, so Khalifa is using her devil fruit for that. And then we get 11. We'll gladly accept your soaked cash. So now we have a group of doctors are now set and ready to work on actually saving Lucci. I'm like, you clearly do not understand the Hippocratic Oath because you should have been treating him no matter what. At least Kureha does that. By the way, Katie Seagal, perfect as Kureha, no notes. I want her pants. I just want her outfit. Looks awesome. She did great. Then we get 12, shopping and smoking. So now we just essentially, the rest of the crew are like, okay, so, well, we don't really have much else to do right now. We gotta wait while Lucci is being treated, and we can't exactly leave. So what are we gonna do? So Kumidori and Khalifa end up going shopping, getting clothes for everybody, probably getting a little bit of medical treatment themselves. And we see Hattori there as well, and like Kumidori is like feeding Hattori, and Khalifa is smoking one of her cigarettes. I was like, I completely forgot that Khalifa smoked. And she's reading through, like, I guess the notes that she would have about St. Poplar, I guess, because she was very meticulous in notes that she took as Iceberg's secretary. 13, waiting for the shoppers. Kaku, Blueno, Jabra, and Fukuro are sitting in a cafe. So now we just have, like, those four just, like, sitting around. Their wounds are probably pretty well healed at this point in time. And they're just like, okay, well, let's just, like, sit and read and relax and everything else like that. Blueno is reading the newspaper. This would be probably one of the first newspapers that would come out after the incident at Ennis Lobby. So he's trying to get, like, caught up on the news, probably. This probably doesn't mention anything about the Straw Hats yet, or like they didn't have their new bounties yet, or it might have been the newspaper with their new bounties, because this is kind of taking place concurrently with what's happening during the post-Ennis Lobby arc. Post-Ennis Lobby Return to Water 7 arc is kind of how this is lining up, because they need to get Lucci medical attention, so they're doing that. So, 14, Awakening. Rob Lucci recovers from his injuries, and Hattori is just so happy. So Lucci sits up. To be fair, for Lucci here, he is essentially has been sitting, like, he got knocked out by Luffy, and now he is waking up in this bed. Don't know how much he's been in and out of consciousness over the last, whatever, day and a half, 2 days, whatever it's been, since Lucci defeated him. Don't know how much he's been in and out of consciousness since then. Probably very little actually being awake enough to understand what's going on, besides the others being like, it's okay, it's okay, Lucci. We're going to get you medical attention. We're going to another island. We're going to get you medical attention. It's okay, Lucci. We're earning money to get you this. Ignore the giraffe slide. It's fine. And then Hattori is just like, woo, yay, cool. You're awake. I love the devotion that Hattori has to Lucci, and that Lucci kind of as well has toward Hattori, because like he even makes him like his little outfits and everything else like that, or has little outfits made for Hattori because reasons. So Lucci is all better. 15, discharged from the hospital. So we see Lucci is shaking hands with the doctors who saved his life. All of the different members of CP9 are in just like casual clothes. They're also kind of in hiding at this point in time, I would think, because by a technicality, they are wanted in the fact that, like, you know, Spondum did like blame what happened to Ennis Lobby on them, blame them for the Buster Call happening. So not too much that can be done there. But it is kind of like, you know, they're kind of, I guess, wanted. Also, I guess news about them, Kaku and Lucci and Khalifa and Bluno being traitors to Water 7 hasn't spread to the other islands yet. You'd think it would, but whatever. Okay, but we get to see them all in just like regular clothes. And then 16, everybody has fun bowling. So the group has decided to go bowling, which bowling is canonically in the One Piece world. And they're just like all there sitting and keeping score and everything like that. And Khalifa just like, boom, annihilates all the pins. And they seem to have broken into teams a little bit. So we got Fukuro, Kaku, Lucci, Kumadori, and Khalifa here. They're probably just all playing against each other anyway. By the way, I am not good at bowling. I have gotten very few strikes any time that I go bowling. Very rare that I get a strike. 17, a ruckus in the town. So Bluno and Jabra are getting ready to do their round in the bowling match. And there ends up being like this commotion in the background at the front of the like arcade casino area where they're bowling, the bowling alley. And they're like, oh no, there's like something happening. So like they clock it. And it's like, oh, well, that's not good. Let's go see what's going on. 18. The Candy Pirates appear in St. Poplar Harbor. Oh, no, not the Candy Pirates. So, the Candy Pirates just seem like something that would be like an offshoot of Big Mom's Pirates. So, we have this guy show up. He is the captain of the Candy Pirates. I do not know if we ever get the guy's name. I really don't care. And he's shown up with his crew, and they are attacking. And all of his like minions have like little candy things on their heads that look like, the candy and the candy wrappers type stuff. And they've taken several citizens hostage and stuff like that in order to use them. Is menacing the townsfolk. 19, an envoy of justice. And Lucci just shows up, probably just walks right up to this guy and then kicks him in the head. To be fair, I'm sure Lucci's got a little bit of pent-up rage at this point in time, with getting defeated by Luffy, and with just his general frustration at Spondum and at the world government and everything else going on right now. But he just walks up and just like kicks the guy in the face, kicks the captain in the face, and thus saving the townsfolk. Because, yeah. So the citizens are now just cheering as the rest of the Cypher Pole age of the CP9 have jumped up onto the ship and are just like kicking and punching and whatever the crap out of all of the Candy Pirates. And they're like, yay! Thank you! As they are just like, beating the heck out of them, which is just funny. So that's just kind of nice. To be fair, I mean, okay, they were showing up on the island and they were taking hostages. So yeah, they're not good pirates. So yeah, the CP0, the CP9 agents, they will be CP0 agents later. CP9 agents right now are just kind of like, okay, yeah, no, we're not in the mood for this. We're just gonna beat them up. Also, they're taking civilians hostage. So yeah, we have a reason here to do this. So they just beat them the heck up, which is just funny. 21, excessive justice. So Lucci continues to assault the captain of the Candy Pirates, is already down, so he keeps doing that. And the townsfolk are kind of getting, horrified by the bloodshed. It's just like, okay, maybe not. Like, there's like this mom there with her daughter that had been one of the hostages. And she's like, okay, honey, we're going to have you look the other way now, at this, for Lucci just like beating the crap out of him. 22, we cannot remain in this town. So now they've defeated the Candy Pirates. Lucci is better, but they're like, okay, we can't really stay in this town anymore. We're drawing too much attention to ourselves. We have to go somewhere else. So we see them all essentially making the decision that they need to head out. That the 7 of them are like, okay, well, 8 of them if you want to include Hatori, are like, okay, we need to get out of here. We need to go somewhere else. And then we have this moment where 23, too beautiful to behold, a flower of thanks. This little girl who I think is the one that, or I don't think she's the one who got like saved with her mom, but maybe she is. I don't know, inconsistencies in coloring. But one of the little girls has picked this little flower and she's walked over to Khalifa and she's holding the little flower up to Khalifa as like, thank you, lady. And Khalifa is just like, oh, thank you. And then like Kumadori, Fukuro, and Jabra are just like, oh god, that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. Because like the Cypher Pull agents are not used to being thanked for their efforts. They're not used to that. They are, this was drummed into them as children, as, orphans, or in the case of like Khalifa, her father like was like, here, you're gonna go be a secret agent and you're not gonna have any relationship with your sister and blah 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 blah. And you're gonna be a Cypher Pull agent and you're gonna end up in CP9 and blah 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 blah. Because that's what our family does. Then why did you have a child? You're a prick. But like, so they, so we have that set up there. And, they're just like, they're trained to ignore emotions, to not develop emotional attachments, different things like that. And this is just like this nice thing where like they're being thanked for actually saving people. And that's kind of like a different thing for them. Not really going to end up mattering that much to them in the long run, but it's nice while it happens. Then we have 24. CP9 departs from St. Poplar. So they just steal the pirate ship. They probably got the candy pirates all tied up and gave them to the citizens of St. Poplar, so that way they could just like trade them in for the bounty, I guess. Hopefully that's what happened. And now they've stolen the ship, and now they've set sail for their next location. 25. Homeland. So now we get to where they have arrived on what is referred to as like the Cypher Pull agent's homeland, CP9's homeland. I don't remember if we ever get an exact name for this place. I've tried looking for it and I couldn't find anything that specifically said the name of what this island is. But this is the island where each of them were brought when they were children to be trained as a Cypher Pull agent, specifically to be like CP9 agents. And so they're back here and they're all kind of celebrating. Well, most of them are celebrating. Lucci's just like, okay, well, I guess we're back here now. But the other ones are kind of happy because that's the thing is like, I think we do see flashbacks at one point in time for the Cypher Pull agents, for the CP9 crew, where they do kind of remember growing up together on this island in regards to like training and all of that stuff. And that is kind of one of the things that like this series kind of reminds me is like, because throughout the course of Enies Lobby, you have like Lucci and Jabra at like each other's throats in regards to like the cat and dog relationship there with like, Lucci's leopard and Jabra's wolf and everything for like that rivalry. And then of course you have Jabra just kind of picking on Kaku for being a giraffe. Giraffes are cool. Shut up. Like picking on Kaku for being a giraffe and everything. And so we see a bunch of that. And it is kind of this interesting thing where it's just like, they do actually all kind of care about each other. Because it is kind of this thing that goes along with like, they're trained to not like develop emotional attachments to people. Very similar to like the way that Jedi are in Star Wars. They're trained and it's like beat into them to not develop like emotional attachments or to care about other people. I kind of think, because like Kaku even says that he did like working at Galley Law. He liked working with Iceberg and Polly and the others. And he liked doing that. And I think Khalifa actually did kind of like being the secretary there because it was a fun job for her. And I think Lucci even kind of enjoyed doing it because it let him have a little bit of humor in the fact that he got to have Hatori as like his ventriloquist pigeon, which was just additional funny. And, stuff like that. And like Blue and O, I guess, maybe liked getting to be a bartender, different things like that. And the thing is that the Cypher Pull agents, the CP9 one specifically, you end up having to go undercover all the time. Or like these very, very long stretches of time where they have to be undercover. There's like this whole setup system there where it's just like, okay, there's a lot that they need to do, but maybe there's bits where they do try to find ways to like enjoy themselves while they're in this role or something like that. But then they also do have these bonds with each other, and that bond did not extend to Nero because they don't care about Nero, and it didn't extend to Spondum because Spondum's an idiot, because at the very least these ones are all pretty capable in what they can do, whereas Spondum is probably, he's weaker than a regular soldier from the way that it's described, so there's that. But so like these ones are all like, okay, well, let's see what we can do here. They are like each other's family, closest thing to family that a lot of them have, although Kumadori, I think, does talk about having a mom, and then of course Khalifa had her dad and her sister. Alpha is still alive to the best of our knowledge. We don't know about Latchkey, but maybe. And then we get into 26, the next generation of Cypherpole in training. So the group are kind of like spying on, we see them up on the tower on the island, because they're like this big kind of overgrown tower on the island, and they're sitting up on it looking down at where this next group of these children, who are probably all just orphans that the government has picked up, similar to like how they would get, the orphans and stuff like that from Mother Carmel. And we see them all here training in the same way that the Cypherpole agents would have been trained when the CP9 group were trained when they were growing up here. And they see like the future members of Cypherpole learning their craft. So it's like these are kids being trained to learn all 6 powers and how to fight and everything else like that. And they're like, And then we have 27. Pursuers arrive to capture Cypherpole 9, to catch CP9. And now we have Captain Very Good of the Marines is showing up. And he's one of the Marines that shows up at Ennis Lobby, and Frankie kind of ends up fighting him. He has the berry fruit that allows him to turn into like balls. Like turn his body into balls. Sure. So he shows up, and his intention is to capture the rogue agents. 29. We won't let you disturb our home. So now we get this fun shot where it's each of them have gone into like their silhouette thing. So we have, they're all in, using their devil fruit powers if they have them, or so. And so it's Kumadori is actually a lion. I was trying to remember what his like animal counterpart is, but they're all like silhouetting themselves and trying to look as intimidating as possible. Fukuro's up in the tree like an owl. Kumadori's being a lion. Khalifa's doing like her sheep antler thing that she did against Nami. We got Jabber in his wolf form, Lucci in his giant hybrid form, Kaku in his giraffe form with this, in his hybrid form, and then Bluno. And they're like staring down the Marines that have been brought to capture them. And they're just like, yeah, no, you're not taking our island. You are not taking our island. 29. Spondum in his intensive care unit receives a Denden Mushi. So Spondum, who of course got beat to all heck by Robin and deserved far worse for what he did. It's just like, I swear it looks like almost every bone in his body has been broken. Good. And so he's just lying there covered in bandages and casts and everything else like that. And he gets this unexpected call. 30. This is your former subordinate, Rob Lucci. So now we have this moment where Lucci has gotten a hold of the Denden Mushi on the ship, or that the Marines had. And he is talking to Spondum via it and is essentially like, yeah, no, this is your former subordinate. Don't you dare come after us again, or we will find you and you will be gone very quickly. So 31. Someday we shall return. So yeah, Lucci is just essentially threatening him. And then we get into 29, as I said. Someday we shall return. And we see this is funny. This is a great shot because it's we see the let the jingling stop. Good boy. And so we see the Cypherpole agents, the CP9 agents here, and they have defeated the Marines, and they have defeated Very Good, and they are actually each holding a piece of him because he's turned in, his ball power has activated, and he's turned into like balls, and each of them are holding at least one piece of him. Like Lucci is not holding a piece, but Fukuro and Kumidori are each holding 2 pieces of the thing that of like him being turned into berries. And like the rest of the Marines are just on the ground around them, and it's just like, yeah, no, we beat your Marines. Don't come after us again. We're gonna return someday, but you won't ever know when. So then we see that's just funny. And then we have 32, excuse me. Or did I miss my thing? No, I just think I just off by 1. Father and son plot the obliteration of CP9. So Spondine, who is Spondum's father, has shown up, and he has listened to Spondum's tear-stained story of what had happened. And of course, Spondine is, of course, the head agent that we saw during Robin's flashback that had been at O'Hara and had been the one to call the Buster call on O'Hara and all of that stuff. And so we have that here, and he's the one who essentially pulled strings. Spondine at least seemed to be a rather competent agent, as competent as one can be when one is related to Spondum. And he does seem to care about his son, as pathetic as he is. And what ends up happening is, of course, Spondine is the one who pulled strings to get Spondum into the position of leader of Cypherpole 9, and is, one of the reasons that Spondum went after, tried to use his influence and his power to try to go after the Pluton blueprints and everything else like that. That's why he, was able to, get, permission to go after that stuff from the elders. From the Gorosei. Yeah, that's not going to go well. And then we have 33. The ship sails off into the distance. So the Cypherpole, CP9 have defeated very good. And his pieces are just strewn across the ground on the island. And the Cypherpole agents are just sailing off on the Marine ship instead of the pirate ship. And Very Good is just scattered across the ground, and then planted into the ground is the flower that Khalifa received from the little girl as thanks. So just like this little flower there being planted on this island where there's kind of been, just nothing but loneliness and pain and even some camaraderie for them, is now like, okay, this flower of us being thanked. Let's see what we can do from here. And then we get a long time before we get any other information about the CP9 crew. And they do end up eventually showing back up at Dressrosa. We see Lucci and Kaku, I do think, appear at Dressrosa when they, when there's information going on about Doflamingo and everything else like that. They are there. And then, of course, we do get the big major reveal of them again up in during the Reverie up at Marijois. Also, the live action did a great job with the Reverie flashback. I loved how they handled it. And I love that they brought in so much information that, that we know now, with more context of the world, with more world building, we now have, these other rulers that can be brought in here. So there was the question for so what happened during the time skip? How did the Cypherpole agents, how did CP9, these rogue agents, end up as CP0 agents and such high levels? What happened during this time frame? Well, one of the things that happened during this time frame is that both Lucci and Kaku managed to awaken their devil fruits. Jabra probably did too. Maybe some of the other, maybe Khalifa did as well, although I don't know what would happen if you awaken bubbles. Besides, I guess, turning other things into bubbles around you. Sure. But what ended up happening, and this is something that someone asked Oda in an SBS question, and he answered it in SBS 109. And essentially what happened was, after the independent report, the Cypherpole agents did go off on their own, and they'd been accused of failing their mission. Of course, Spondum blamed them for that and everything like that to get them kicked out of Cypherpole and everything else like that. And they just kind of vanished into the wind. And they just, began to train and become even stronger. Then what also ended up happening is Spondum ended up being via strings pulled by, Spondine, ended up being made the head of Cypherpol and Cypherpol 0. It's like, this man is incompetent. I just, failing up. And so that's what happens there. Then Lucci and his friends end up teaming up with Spondine in order to uncover a criminal conspiracy by the underworld bigwigs. So a bunch of the ones that we saw at like Big Mom's tea party. Probably with some information being leaked to them by Stussy, just given the circumstances. And former level 6 prisoners that had managed to escape when Blackbeard had, freed the level 6 prisoners from Impel Down. And such. So it's like they're, the former prisoners and the underworld working together and to try to destroy whatever amount of peace was still in the world at the time. What ends up happening is Lucci and his group end up destroying this organization. And given that, there are several things that happen at the same time. Spondine becomes sick. We don't know if he dies, but he became sick, so he kind of loses a lot of his influence. And this means that now Lucci and his friends now get promoted, and they get brought in and made members of Cypherpol 0. And then Spondum ends up getting demoted and has to be Lucci's underling, which is just extra hilarious and wonderful. So we have that. So essentially what ends up happening is after that, Lucci and the others are now full members of Cypherpol 0. And, we see them during the Reverie flashbacks and everything during the Reverie and during the Reverie flashbacks and stuff, where, Lucci and such, end up holding Vivi hostage, and then she escapes with Wapol and everything. And then, of course, much more recently, we saw Lucci and Kaku on Egghead in regards to, being there with Stussy and everything. Califan Blueno also appeared in film Red. Lucci and Spondum are in film Gold. But I think that's it. I don't think any of the other ones are in film Gold that I remember, because I think Lucci ends up fighting Sapo, and then Spondum gets beat to heck by Luffy again. Good. He deserves it. But that's about it here. As I said, there's like this gap that needed to be filled in, that people were like, how did they end up as Cypherpol 0 agents? What happened? How did they get to that position? So Oda did, yes, answer that question in an SBS. Again, it goes along with like the information about like the Rocky Port incident and different things like that are like a little bit more of like, okay, stuff Oda wanted to use in the story, but he didn't have the chance because it would have messed up with like how things were running, or it just didn't quite fit with how he wanted to put it. So we get the SBS answer, which is fine. This one's a fairly clarified answer for what happened. So that's what we have here for this one, for the CP9's independent report. So I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.